Hey guys, Andy here. So regular subscribers will know in the last 2 or 3 years I've been a lot more into healthy things, a lot of cycling, going to the gym, running. So when health and tech cross, that's that area that I love to get into. So Whoop seemed like the obvious thing. I've already done a kind of an introduction to Whoop, who they are, where they're from, and kind of what it does in the first video. So I'm going to try and remember to put a link up there for that. If you've not seen that, you might want to go and see that first. I don't think I'm going to try and still cover everything. So this is the actual review. That other video was kind of my intro and what Whoop is about. This one is about my impressions, having used it now for 3 or 4 weeks, I think, and whether I think it's a worthy investment or not. So let's get on with it. So if we start with the design, obviously there's no screen on this fitness tracker. It's just a sensor or a bunch of sensors in a module that goes on your arm. All there is an LED light which tells you the battery level. But to be honest, I always just check that in the app. You spend quite a bit of time in the app. It tells you on a few different screens what the battery level is, and we'll come to battery in a short while. So it is very small, lightweight, and actually, so I bought this, it's an extra bicep strap. Normally it comes on the wrist. I don't like wearing things on my wrist, especially if I'm going to sleep with them on. So in the initial order, I got the bicep strap. And actually it's really very comfortable. A lot of time I forget that I'm wearing it. I have to kind of go, oh yeah, I've got it on. And honestly, I've not actually taken it. Well, if I've taken it off, it's been no more than 5 or 6 seconds perhaps. You wear it in the shower, you wear it to sleep, you wear it to the gym, you wear it cycling. That's the whole idea. You wear it everywhere, 24/7. It's tracking your information or your biometrics. Again, we'll perhaps come to the different bits that it tracks. There are lots of different extras. So like I say, I bought the bicep strap, but you can get shorts and articles of clothing like underwear and things like that has a little compartment for the sensor to go in. I have to say I'm quite tempted. All mine's a few different pairs of pants so therefore I didn't have to actually wear the arm strap or a pair of shorts I'm just wearing around the house that I could kind of, I don't even give my arm a rest. Not that you don't really notice it. I do every now and then. I'll move it a little bit because it gets a little sweaty underneath there because it's just on there the whole time. They're quite expensive, a lot of the extras. I suppose they're maybe trying to sell you the Whoop Pro and you get 20% off everything with free next day delivery. You also get a free item every 3 months with Whoop Pro. I have to be honest, I was tempted. I was actually quite tempted because, like I say, I wouldn't mind some of the different items. And I might still do it. I'll let you know, I suppose, if I do go to Whoop Pro. The other thing that the device has, it does have haptics, so you can set an alarm. You can have it based on your recovery, your time in bed, or just a wake-up time. I don't really use alarm silence. I've not actually tried that. I don't want to be woken up. I'm trying to sleep as long as I can. But there is a haptic alarm in there apparently to wake you up. So I mentioned the battery. And as I say, I've only taken this off for a few seconds, once, maybe twice, because even when you're charging, it's quite a clever little sort of basically, there we go. That's the battery charger. That's the battery unit. It just slides on. And you do have to be careful not to pinch skin, but that just slides on and you carry on. So you wear that for, well, what did I spend? It recharges around 50% in an hour. So worst case scenario, you have to have it on for 2 hours and you charge back up to full. They claim 5 days of battery life, and I think they're about right. I'm generally getting about 5 days, which I think is pretty good. And again, if it then charges back up in 2 hours while you're wearing it, there's going to be things you can be doing sitting around the house where you can just put on, watching a movie, clip that on for a little while. I mean, you can carry on exercise and it literally carries on as normal while you're charging it. So I think that's quite clever. So if we talk about metrics, the HRV is the sort of big selling point, and that is, if you see your heart rate as a sort of a graph like they have in the medical ER or something, your heart rate variance is the gap between the beats, I think, and how that changes. And if it's the same every time, that's a bad thing. Who knew? Or if that variance is very small. If the variance is very big, it's basically saying your heart's in a better place, or your body is in a better place to deal with stress. And it's one of the metrics it uses to give you your recovery score. In fact, so let's have a look now. So we're in the app here, and as I said, you can see my battery percentage if you needed to check of the device. So if we're going to talk about recovery, let me jump over to the recovery screen. Oh, we don't want to do this at the minute, sorry. So it does do that every day in theory. It pops up a journal, it answers some yes/no questions about, did you do this, did you do that, we're using a screen before bed. And in theory, it's supposed to tell you some insight, right? Don't do this because you always sleep badly or you don't recover as well when you do this. If you have dairy before you go to bed, and it's not really giving me anything yet. I don't know if it's still too soon. So we get a recovery score, and it tells us the metrics on the bottom here. So heart rate variance 76, resting heart rate 45. I got 7 hours and 26 of sleep, and my respiratory rate 50.5. And then underneath that, as you can see, maybe previous 30-day average. But if we scroll up, we get to see recovery. So I've had a couple of good days, well, a few good days and a couple of bad days. I have exercised quite heavily yesterday and today. And interesting, even though, so where do I go? So go to sleep. So even though that is the percentage of time I manage to sleep compared to what it thinks I need to sleep. So if it says I need 9 hours sleep and I have 8 hours, that's about 89%, I think. So even though I slept quite well the last 2 days, my recovery score has not been as good, which in some ways you might say it's a bit of a surprise, but at the same time, I exercised quite heavily yesterday. So even with a decent sleep, it's saying, well, you're not in great shape. And we can see how the heart rate variance, so you can see it's on a bit of a decline there. And again, I exercised quite heavily on Monday, so the next day it was low. Resting heart rate, again, the day after Monday it was a bit higher. My respiratory rate seems quite steady. So that's using these different factors, it gives you your recovery score. Although I do have one, so I took a screenshot of one time that it said, well, I mean, basically everything was bad. It was really bad recovery. All of my vitals were down or the wrong side of good, but they were all green. I didn't quite understand why they're still green. Surely it should be at least amber or red. It says, they're at green up to this point, and then, well, it was still showing me as green. So I'm not quite sure what that's about. And then I guess you could talk about, so how effective is this recovery score? Well, what day was it? There was a day where I didn't think I'd slept as well. I thought it was a bit of a broken sleep and this and the other, but my recovery score was 90-odd%. And I was setting out on a ride, and I thought, well, let's see how this goes, because it says I'm feeling good, but I don't feel particularly good. And actually, it was 100 kilometers, so 62-mile ride, and it was about 50 odd miles in, and when I finally started feeling it in my legs. And actually, yeah, it was right. It said I was well recovered and I was ready to exercise. And actually, I was kind of surprised myself how well I did compared to yesterday, where my recovery was whatever it was, 60 something. But I've been rested. I've not really exercised for a few days. So I thought, well, I should be fine. And actually, within 30 miles or so, I started to feel, oh my goodness, this is not going so well. So yeah, I thought that was quite interesting. If you'd asked me, so how recovered do you feel on the 2 days? Well, I wouldn't have matched up with what my recovery score was, but it seemed like my recovery score was right as I got into the ride. Data interpretation is one of their big things. This is the whole point. They're gathering 100 meg of data on you every day, and they're trying to interpret that to say how well you are ready to exercise or what you should be doing that current day based on the metrics. The sleep tracking as well, which seems quite accurate. We'll come to accuracy in the next thing. Let's go to accuracy now. So we'll start with the heart rate though. So up to version 3, this is the Whoop 4.0. Up to version 3, there were some question marks around its accuracy. It's surprisingly hard to compare heart rates and metrics from 2 different GPX or FIT files or TCX files. I would have thought it quite easy. Now I can pay DC Rainmaker, which maybe I should do, and just buy his software, and then I can compare them. But I just almost out of it shouldn't be that hard. I didn't want it because it should be easier to do. And I did manage to sort of rip together a graph on my heart rates. So the red line being the Whoop and the blue line being my Ticker chest rate monitor, because it is generally regarded that a chest band heart rate monitor is going to be much more accurate than an optical, like a watch or like the Whoop. And you can see there are some differences. I mean, the biggest one is near the end there. Now, the other problem is because different things pause and carry on again automatically when you're exercising, the further you go into an exercise, the harder it is to still compare, in the right place. And it is possible that bit where the Whoop seemed to kind of like almost just give up for a little while, it could be that I've misaligned pauses. I don't know. Because up to that point, I would say they're generally quite accurate. When I've been cycling sort of indoors on my trainer, had the Whoop on, I've had my heart rate there on my TV from my chest strap, and I'm able to open the app up and look at the app and then look at the TV. On lower heart rates, the Whoop has been 1 or 2 under, and on higher heart rates, the Whoop has been 1 or 2, occasionally 3 over. So generally within 5%, which you could say that's not very accurate. Do we need it super accurate? I don't know. But I thought on the whole the accuracy was pretty good. I wouldn't have been overly worried if I went out to do a ride and I'd forgot my chest strap. I would just connect in my Whoop, because you can get the Whoop to broadcast like other things will and connect it into your cycle computer or something for a ride. And I wouldn't be too worried if that happened. So I thought the heart rate monitoring pretty good. Sleep was interesting. I've got a sleep mat which monitors when I'm sleeping in my bed, my sleep. And the numbers for sort of time of sleep were pretty similar. The numbers for deep sleep were very similar, but then they disagreed when it came to REM and light sleep. And the problem here, I suppose, I don't know, which is going to be crap. One of them had sort of 4 hours of light sleep and I don't know what it was less than an hour of REM. And the other one had a couple of hours of REM and a couple of hours of light. I mean, that one actually makes more sense to me, and that was the Whoop. But whether or not it is right, I can't be sure. So calories is another interesting one. So in theory, they are telling you as through the day, everything you do, this is the amount of calories you've burnt, be it exercising, be it sitting on your couch watching a movie, be it washing the car and stuff like that. It says, well, based on your metrics, this is how many calories you burn. To me, it seems a really low number. I'd go for a 2-hour ride and Strava will tell me you've burnt 1,700 calories and the Whoop will tell me you've burnt 1,100 or something like that. They're really quite different. And I don't believe the Whoop in this case because, I've tracked very carefully what I've eaten over the last few years. And if the Whoop was true, I'd be well overweight by this point because the things I eat, I use the Strava calculation of the calories to try and make sure I'm eating around the right amount. Whereas the Whoop is down here and I'd be overeating all the time. So I don't think that the calorie readout is particularly good. I'm not really using it for the calorie readout, so that's kind of fine, I suppose. The auto, I think I did cover this in the first video. I didn't do anything with the app. I just went out for a ride. I rode out to a coffee stop and I rode back from a coffee stop. It auto detected I was cycling. It gives me a score for each of the two. It actually syncs that into Strava as well, so it can push things to Strava. You can have it track your routes using the GPS in the phone. There's no GPS in the Whoop, but if you start the activity from your phone, you can say, yeah, track me as well. So you can just, like when I go for a walk at lunchtimes or even go for a run, I use the heart rate from the Whoop and I tell my phone to use its GPS data and I track the route that I do and it will sync that to Strava for me. It will use the low calorie amount, but again, I know what's going on there. So so there is, bottom line, there is a lot of information. And if you're that kind of guy like me that's into information, into these data and metrics, there is a lot to see. I've not really seen benefit yet in the weekly reports or the monthly reports. And maybe as I use it more, it starts learning more and it will give me more useful information back. So what do I think of the Whoop? It's certainly far from essential. There's no doubt. I'd be pretty silly to sit saying you've got to get this. If you're serious about your fitness, you need a Whoop. No, you don't. Is it handy? Yeah, definitely. I love permanent tracking, so yeah, again, like I've mentioned, sort of washing the car. Who really knows? There's times I'm washing the car and I feel a bit sweaty and a bit hot, like my heart rate maybe is a bit up, and I've never really thought much about it before. But now when I'm wearing this, anything I do like that, it's going to track and tell me. You know, it'll give me a strain score. Anything I'm doing, again, it's you don't have to tell it. Right, I'm going to go and wash the car. You just do things, and your heart rate goes up. Like that cycling, it knew I was doing something because my heart rate went up. Oh, you're doing something. I think it's cycling. You know, it knows kind of. I don't think it'll be able to guess I was washing the car, but if I go for a walk, or if I go to the gym, in theory, it should be able to work out. And I've not really done the auto detection for gym. I always tell it right. I'm in the gym. I'm starting my workout. But I like that sort of. You know, I have quite a sedate job these days. I'm generally sat in front of a computer now, and I almost wish I had this when I worked in a shop. So when I spent 2 hours on the shop floor walking around, well, how much effort was that? Probably not a lot, but still, if you've got a more active job, if you're a postman or something, I think it'd be quite interesting to know your heart rate and how much strain you put on your body through your day-to-day job. So I love that. I love just the permanent tracking, and anything I do, it's going to kind of evaluate for me. Is it good value? Now, value is very much dependent on your own disposable income. So I can't tell you if it is or isn't. Many would argue because it's a subscription, that's a bad idea. That's not, it's not good value because you're paying every year. I'm going to have to pay every year or 2 years or whatever. Every year, 240, I think it might be. That's quite a lot. I mean, I would not have bought it. So you may know, I was going to have been made redundant a few weeks back, and thankfully I managed to pivot and keep a different job. If I was being made redundant, I wouldn't have bought the Whoop, almost certainly. But I've not been made redundant. I earn a reasonable wage. This is the kind of thing, like I said earlier, that sort of it interests me. I love metrics. I love healthy living and exercise and that kind of thing these days. So it just seemed to me, it's a good way to spend my money. Will I continue my sub in 12 months? Probably, but at the same time, it's maybe a bit earlier. I mean, I'm curious to see over the months how this sort of the build-up of data is analysed and how much use I can make of that and how much it can sort of extract from that information and tell me. So maybe I'll have to do a follow-up video in 6 months' time, or when I'm nearing the end of this initial subscription, maybe. So I realize in some ways this is not, well, I don't know, I've gone on for almost 20 minutes, but there's a lot of stuff that I've probably not been through, like in the app, for example. But do watch that first video if you're thinking, well, you've not covered, because I think I spent quite a lot of time going through things in the app. If you have any questions, do put them in the comments down below. I do read all of the comments. And if it's a question that I can answer, and if it's a reasonable, normal question, then I will try and answer it. So do leave a comment. Thanks ever so much for watching. I give it all the usual. Please, if you don't already subscribe, please do. Give the video a thumbs up. It does help. I know people get annoyed by YouTubers asking that, but I mean, I'm spending time making this video. At least you're going to click a little thumbs up because it does actually help. It will help. Yeah, have any questions, let me know. But for now, my name's Andy, and I'll catch you all again soon.